Well, it looks like today we're going to be talking about how some people might have a touch of the tism.
Touch of the tism.
Yeah, that's definitely the phrase of the week or
Right?
past 5 years. But
Right.
let's get into that. Why is everybody autistic and ADHD and neurodivergent?
Right. So
And
what
is
are we
that
talking
really
about?
the case? Is that really so?
So what are we talking about here? We're talking about autism, right? So the
Yes.
classic term is autism. Autism really, that term for me encompasses the really significant neurodivergent person. That the person that has all the classic signs. What was that? Rain Man is a classic example
Right.
of full-on autism.
Right.
It is an inability to have really interpersonal relationships. It's a problem for interpersonal relationships. Lots of times with true autism, about 50% of the time, there comes some kind of mental retardation, I guess is not the right word to use, but
Mhm.
some significant
Intellectual disability, I guess, is
intellectual disability. See, I'm showing my age now when I'm using the R word. So sorry. I apologize
right.
to the world for using the R word,
Yeah.
but some
I mean,
intellectual.
it wasn't like it wasn't a bad thing to say, like, I mean, it
No, I
was,
mean, it was actually a term that was, yeah, it has a meaning to it.
yeah.
And people hijacked it to use it to, you know, be insulting. That's not
Well,
what I'm doing.
you razz your friends.
Yeah, exactly. So true autism, 50% of true significant autism has intellectual disability. There can be inability to verbally communicate. I mean, significant.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what, you look at Rain Man, and that's what typical.
Right.
And so it's called autism or pervasive developmental disorder or neurodivergent is the new term for it. They all kind of mean the same thing, but let's talk about a pervasive developmental disorder. Okay, that's the big old umbrella over it, and everything as we talk about is on a spectrum from 0 to 100, and there really is nobody that's zero that has zero pervasive developmental disorder characteristics,
Right.
and there's very few, if any, people that have 100 percent that. Same thing. We all fall in on the spectrum somewhere. So, and this is
Mhm.
just in my mind. This is not a scientific. This is not. This is how I kind of categorize stuff. When people are significantly on the autism spectrum, like Rain Man, I'm saying they're like an 80 or a 90, right?
Right.
If you're in Asperger's, which means that you're kind of, I always could talk about it as autism light. You
A
have the
high
care
functioning.
high
Right.
functioning, right? So I'm using them their pedestrian terms, Tom.
Right. Mhm.
You could be somewhere in the 40 to 50 to even 60%. You have trouble with interpersonal skills, relationships, but you can have them, but they're not easy. They're a little more difficult. They take
Right.
some time and effort and energy, those kinds of things. But we all fall on the spectrum somewhere. And
Mhm.
so we all fall on the spectrum somewhere,
Does
period.
autism light mean that there are ads?
And there's, yeah, people throwing a football and jumping in the pool. Autism light.
Yeah.
It's
Mhm.
refreshing.
Yeah, exactly. Should I throw the ball back to Jimmy or put on some goggles and look at his feet? That was a shout out to Mitch Hedberg right there.
Yeah.
Well,
So you go ahead.
so why okay, we're all kind of like in a way like on the spectrum is broad, right?
Right.
Mhm. When we discuss mental disorders, here's the most important piece. Um, in my humble opinion, but I don't think that this is really up amongst clinicians up for a huge debate. I mean, there's might be nuances, but the major key to focus on is how is this impacting your day-to-day functioning,
Right.
right? And if it is significantly, then there's a mental health disorder that we need to treat in some way. All right. And
And
so,
that goes for pervasive developmental disorders, depression, anxiety, PTSD, anything that you can think of
right.
falls
So
into that
how
category.
how severely is it impacting your ability to function? So a lot of the people that are online that are claiming to be neurodivergent, okay, okay, not saying you're not, right? How is
Hmm.
that impacting your ability to function? Is it that, people aren't laughing at your jokes, or you look at things differently and that's a little bit of a challenge, but are you still working and have access to food and shelter and right, like
Right.
have support, have
Hmm.
strengths, or is it so severe that like if left unchecked, you're going to be in an institution or homeless? It's probably not the case.
Right. So we look at it as impacting, the different areas of your life, your significant relationships, primary relationship, family, friends. Does it impact your ability to work and earn money to care for yourself? And does it impact your health and, uh, your health? So you
Yeah.
look at those different areas, and if the answer is yes, it's impacting those different areas, and a lot of things can just impact one area, particularly like where anxiety, depression can impact all areas of your life. Um, uh, a pervasive developmental disorder, on whatever scale, can usually interferes with relationships and or working. We
Hmm.
see a lot of people that are living okay lives, but because of their where they're at in the spectrum of a pervasive developmental disorder, it makes working difficult,
Yeah. Or working with that person difficult.
for sure. Hmm.
Hmm. The reason for the label, and I hate that this is the case, but it's the case in a lot of instances, is I want others around me to be more considerate, compassionate, empathic, accommodating to me and to my disorder. And there's not a, I want to like treat this disorder and maybe get better and figure out how to function in the world around me. I want the world to bend to me and what I need. And I think that that is a cognitive distortion. And I
Hmm.
think that's where maybe we venture into being a little bit more, what's the word you had used before? People aren't going to like it. Right.
People
Right.
aren't gonna like it, right?
Yeah.
So, it's great when people recognize, they do that self-evaluation and they recognize the things going on in their life and how my thinking, acting, behaving emotionally is impacting my interactions with the world. I will love it when people are taking that self examination and applying that to how am I interacting in the world. But when you come to your conclusions and now you're wearing this as your personality,
Hmm.
that's a problem.
Because it's
That's a
not a
problem.
personality.
It's
It's
not a personality. It's not supposed to be a personality.
right. And we
It's
have
supposed
worked with
to. Mhm.
people who have all across
Oh
the
yeah.
spectrum,
Hmm.
severe autistic, very, very challenging to work with,
Significant.
very
Hmm.
hard to communicate with and attend to their needs and their behaviors. Then we've also worked with the very high functioning,
Hmm.
Asperger's type, where we make some little tweaks in here, but it's almost imperceptible that maybe they have,
Hmm.
a disorder, but it definitely shows up and impacts their ability to function socially and emotionally with family and career wise, can't hold down jobs, maintain employment because of, dealing with the challenges. But you wearing that as a badge of honor and wanting people to bend and fold to you, I have a big problem with that.
And it's funny because really what we've seen in the high functioning kind of Asperger's kind of thing is people, it really hits them as being really socially unaware. So they're very intelligent, they're very high functioning, they're very capable
Right.
people that are living, pretty significant lives. Where we run into them is they're getting blowback from so many people because they don't really care about the relationships they're having with coworkers and whatever. I'm just doing my
Right.
job and doing it well. But
Yes.
because they're not socially perceptible about all the nuances that go on about, well, you don't care about me. You didn't see my face when when you said, you know I don't agree with your premise.
Right. They're not thinking that way.
Right. They don't, yeah, they're, a good way to term is they're just socially not very adept. And they don't pick up on facial cues and
Right.
nuances and niceties and yeah.
They're not so much concerned with the fact, hey, I'm neurodivergent and I need you to be able to honor that
Right.
and respect that. They're
Right.
not thinking that way. So if you're out there saying, well, I'm neurodivergent and I'm autistic and I expect that people, adapt to that, then there's probably a good chance that you're not.
Right. Yeah. I saw this it was a TikTok once, it was a while ago, and it was this woman that said something about this woman applied for a job, right? She was the hiring manager. And she said I don't remember what the term was, but like, because of my neurodivergency, I don't pay attention to time. So I can't be accountable to be here exactly at 9 o'clock every day. And I was like, no.
So, mhm.
Like I can't pay attention to the clock. I had some kind of time distortion as part of my neurodivergency. So,
Yeah.
I can get here, pretty much between 8:30 and 9:30 every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's not how it works.
No, no. And the people who are truly neurodivergent, high functioning, and they know that they have this ailment, they're they have such a challenge, and there is not an expectation that people adapt to it. It's just that they suffer with it. They
Mhm.
suffer with not being a part of. They suffer with dealing with challenging people more so than just the average, like what do they call the NT, right? Neurotypical. Right? They suffer so much, and they come seeking help to cope with it and handle it themselves. And I mean, there's a little bit of trying to, you know, um, encourage those around you, especially people you're working day in and day out, to have a little bit of compassion, a little bit of acceptance to that. So I get that. It's just wanting the world at large to um,
Right.
agree with the label and then
Mhm.
change what they're doing and their belief systems and how they're interacting. Now, there are some people, a lot of people who are okay with that, and they say, "Hey, you know what? You've had trauma. You are have autism. You are neurodivergent, and I'm going to honor that and respect that. Whatever you need, There's a lot of those people out there who are understanding, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. We can't expect that.
And I think with true autism or significant pervasive developmental stuff, even up through Asperger's, the common characteristics, as we talked about, is interpersonal difficulties. So, forming relationships with other people, but it's also that very black and white thinking. Like they don't have the nuances that,
Yeah.
people that don't have that have. Like, you know, it's yes or no, but if this kinds of thing that doesn't exist for them, it's either yes or no. And that's all I can live with is yes or no. I don't understand the, but if you go to work, yes, or on Monday through Friday, or no on Saturday and Sunday. But if it's a holiday, or but if the building's on fire, well, I don't understand the but ifs.
Right. Yeah.
And that was a very, easy, analogy. But
Mm-hmm. Not saying I agree with this, but I think of that movie, a Bronx Tale, and I remember the the one guy being like, nobody cares, right? Like just talking about other people. Nobody cares. I don't agree with it, but I see where that's relevant. Like, nobody really has to care about you and your experience. I mean, I think it's nice to care about others and to put positive stuff out there and to be accommodating and to be just compassionate, to be empathetic of others, but it's definitely not a requirement, not an expectation. And
right,
you know what? There's a lot of people out there that don't care to do
right,
that, and you're going to have to deal with that if you have a mental health challenge. You're going to
mm-hmm.
have to figure out how you can fit in. Maybe that's through therapy and through coping strategies and techniques, maybe even medication, and celebrating the people who do care and who do bend and accommodate you, but know that there's going to be a lot of challenges, and we're going to have to go through those things together. And I
Right,
say together because we're here for you. We're here to
mm-hmm.
help you work through it.
Yeah. And I think, my timelines are probably off, but maybe 20, 25 years ago, there was a big, a lot of discussion around autism. And, why is autism becoming so prevalent now? It's much more common than it used to be. And then people jumped onto the vaccines. Do childhood vaccines cause
Right.
autism? Right?
Hmm.
Because we're seeing so much more autism than we ever have. And it's like, well, first of all, we're just getting better at recognizing what autism is.
Sure.
It
Mhm.
used to be you were just weird, right? So
Right. Yeah.
we just ended it there. But and particularly with the middle of the ground kind of autism. I mean,
Yeah.
full on 80% or 80 on the spectrum, autism is easy to identify for the most part.
Yeah.
But it's those 40s that 40s and 50s that are a little more difficult. So, so then people jumped on, we were just better at identifying it. We became more informed, we became more educated on what it is, and we could figure out some
Mhm.
of the nuances of what is Asperger's, what are the lower, excuse me,
Mhm.
what are the more mild case forms and cases of. But then I think, with this is just my opinion, and Tom, I say just what I'm thinking, and then it's not always popular, and that's okay. I'm all right with that.
Mhm.
But and I think with social media and COVID lockdown and people just getting weird and not interacting, or the bulk of their interaction is on an online forum, video games, and my community is people I play video games with. They're I don't think that they are neurodivergent as much as they're just socially awkward
Right.
based on the lives that they're living.
Thanks to the internet, thanks to
Yeah.
social media, thanks to our technology age,
Right.
So,
The parent comes. My 23-year-old won't leave his room. The only people he interacts with are on video games, and they're, very irritable with me. So they're probably autistic, right?
mhm. Nope.
Mm, maybe.
Right. Could be, but probably maybe not.
Probably
I almost feel like this is like a new disorder emerging that we need to define and look at. And keep in mind that the human brain is magical, complex,
not.
fucking mysterious. So when we talk about these disorders, I mean, there are comorbidities. There's a lot of other issues and symptoms that coincide with it that may not be related to
Hmm.
autism. I mean, especially in young kids, moderate to high functioning autism on the upper end of the spectrum looks a lot like ADD or ADHD.
Hmm.
A
Hmm.
lot of similarities. And even as they get older
Even.
in teens and maybe young adulthood, it looks very, very similar. But we decide on classifying it as this, but the brain is so complex that I mean, we
Mhm.
only classify it as such so that we as clinicians and insurance companies, by the way, can talk about it, can have a discussion about it. But I mean, to give yourself that label, you're more complex than that, just that
All
one
right.
label. And
Labels
that's
are
why
dumb.
people end up saying, well, I'm bipolar and I'm ADHD and I'm schizophrenic and I'm autistic. And you're like,
Hmm.
whoa,
It's almost impossible to be all those things.
wait a minute. How could this be? Mhm.
Right. Yeah. And you talk about your brain, and Tom, you and I have a similar age, and I always speak to what I know, right? So we grew up without phones, without all these, we got video games when we were younger, but they were, more basic things. They were not online. They were, so we didn't grow up with all of this, right? But we have evolved, and we've seen now. You and I will both agree that we have these phones in our hands, and we're using them probably 5, 6 hours a day, right? Some people more than that, like 12 hours a day.
There it is, right, right
Whoopsie,
here.
it's
Yeah.
buzzing as we talk, right? So we have these things, and we've adapted, and our brains have adapted, and our brains have changed, right, with the technology. But imagine these kids that grew up with a phone in their hand since they were 5 years old,
Right. Mhm.
since they were 8 years old. Their brains have developed in a very different, significant way than ours
Yeah.
has, than
Hmm.
other generations have.
Yeah.
What does
It,
that all mean? Not
that's where
really sure.
that's what we're trying to suss out. Like,
Yeah,
what's the impact of that? Well, I mean,
right.
we're seeing symptoms of that, but we haven't quite qualified nor quantified them nor decided on any d definition of what that looks like, but
Mhm.
we're seeing the symptoms of that.
I was doing a safety plan with a person that was had some suicidal ideation, and we were talking about your support network. And no, I don't. I don't talk to my family. Okay. I don't have any friends. Okay. Well, I do have a lot of friends, but they're online. They're who I play video games with. Have you ever met any of these people in person? Well, no. Do you even know if that's their real name? Well, they have
Right.
screen names. Like, this is
Right.
your world. This is your support network. You don't know who these people are really. I don't. Well, maybe you do.
Right.
I don't know. But I mean, this is, I'm trying to develop a safety plan. So
Yeah.
if you're feeling bad, can you call Speedy 99 at 3 in the morning? And
Yeah. Kitty Boom Boom 13. What?
I was like, oh,
They
do
might
you
be out
think
playing
that the
Fortnite.
fact that do you think that the fact that the only people you interact with are online has anything to do with your depression and thoughts of
Yeah.
wanting to kill yourself? Hmm.
Right.
I don't know. So let's talk about that.
I couldn't wait to go to school the next day, not because I wanted to learn, but because I wanted to see my friends.
Exactly. Right.
I tried to talk to my friends on my hamburger phone that was a landline when I was a kid. And I thought that was cool because it had the cheese on it, right? And then my dad would get on the phone because he needed to, make a phone call or something. And he was like, Tom, you on the phone? Get off the phone. There he
Remember
is. He's the party boy. He's on the phone again.
he's talking on the burger.
Yeah.
Well, back in our day, you had a landline. No one had cell phones. They didn't exist. And you had that law. They had the phone was probably in or near the kitchen, and you had a
Yeah.
long cord on it.
Yep.
That was your
Mhm.
world. So you tried to take that long cord around the corner so that you had,
Some
a,
privacy.
a tiny bit of privacy that wasn't really privacy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Wrapping yourself around the cord and.
Yeah.
One of the curls in the cord would always go the opposite way, and it would bug me.
Trying to fix that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
trying to fix that thing. That was a bit of the anxiety early on, anxiety, maybe OCD personality type stuff. Developing, trying to
Our
fix that.
cord wrapped in the kitchen, and if I took it around the corner into the dining room, it went around the refrigerator, right?
Yeah.
So then I'd be talking on the phone, and all of a sudden, like someone's
Yeah,
opening the
yeah,
fridge
trying
and he's pulling on the phone. I remember that.
to.
Anyway,
Okay, out there, you're probably not autistic.
probably not neurodivergent. Maybe, probably, and maybe you are, and maybe you're not. But even if you are, where are you on the spectrum, right? Rate yourself from 0 to 100. And what are you going to do about it? Right? The
Exactly.
world's not going to curve to bend to your will for the most
Right.
part. So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do, learn, stretch, plan, goal, practice so that you can navigate this world effectively?
Right. Okay. We're not saying you do or you don't, right? Probably not, but let's let's say that you do. What are you doing to work on that so that you can function better, especially if it's impacting your ability to function? I mean, we talk about this a lot, especially when it comes to addictions, how uh, somebody who has diabetes, right? Like you don't frown upon them and look at them for having diabetes. You see that as a legit medical concern that they need to attend to. If somebody says, "Yeah, I have diabetes, but I'm not keeping it in check and I'm doing whatever the fuck I want," you'd probably have like a judgment about that. Like you should probably like watch what you're eating, maybe take some medication or, like, um, especially, like if it's going to lead to significant health concerns, right? So, I mean, that should be the same way. I mean, for addictions, if you have an
Yeah.
addiction, like what are you doing to work on that, to recover from that, to make some positive changes? Not that you're a bad person because you have that, but like if you're saying, "Oh, I'm an addict and I just do drugs," like, I mean, you're making your own bed. if you're neurodivergent and right autistic or have ADHD or what have you, what are you doing about it so that you can better function? It's not that suddenly, everybody's gonna, well, he's diabetic, so we need to change the whole menu to accommodate. No, we're gonna have this available to you, but you also need to make sure you're checking your levels and maybe you
Mhm.
wear, a pump, or maybe you wear that Dex thing that checks maybe you do your finger prick, whatever. Maybe you're counting carb counting or whatnot. You're not expecting everybody to, just bend and fold. So why is anything else any different?
Mhm.
Said a whole lot of muckety
All
muck
this,
there.
the moral of the story, Tom, check on your friends that got the sugar.
Yeah, right. Diabetes. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's a great, summary. No matter what's going on in your life, what is it? Hey, to do some self-reflection. What is it? How is it impacting me in my life? And what can I do to better adapt to the world around me?
And like I said before, there are people who will be considerate and who will be accommodating, and I think that that is a wonderful thing. You and I are definitely very, very accommodating, very
Mhm.
empathic, very compassionate, and we try to move people into understanding who they are and how to make some positive changes. We want to move them towards growth. Don't just identify yourself, name tag, I am autistic, and then, like put yourself out there and want to wear that like it's a badge. I mean, I feel for the families, especially the moms who have severe to moderate child with autism, and how it just becomes um, a 36-hour day.
Yeah.
If you said, I'm autistic, because my coworker Nancy, doesn't cover for me because I keep showing up late because I can't get up on time and get to work. Think about that mom who's dealing with a pretty severely autistic child and what her life is
Mhm.
like and how she's trying to manage working and taking
Right.
care of her family and like.
Mhm.
Anyway, that was kind of a rant, but
Yeah. And, the other thing I just want to close with is, language matters, right? So, you know, if you have somebody that does have autism, they are not autistic. They are a person that lives with autism. They're
yeah.
not, you wouldn't call them a cancer. You wouldn't call them
Right, right.
they're a
Yeah.
stroke.
Yeah.
They have a stroke. They live with depression. They live with autism, right? So language matters. People are more complex than the things that than the symptoms that they're trying to manage. So
Right, exactly.
just got
Right.
to throw
That shouldn't become their whole identity.
right.
Mhm. And I think that's probably something that since you brought that up, that was a nice revelation is that maybe I have a challenge with people who make that their entire identity.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Somebody who suffers from diabetes, that's not their identity. That it's a big portion of their life, because we have to eat and we have to monitor that, but
I
it's
am
not
not
who
a
we are.
diabetic. I live with diabetes.
Right. It's
Right.
not who you are. Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Well, Tom, I suffer from being just super fantasticism. So that's just who I am. So
You, you
I, I,
you do.
it's a burden that I will have to live with, Tom, but the burden's all mine.
You've accepted that,
Exactly.
right? Hmm. You don't want anybody to try to change you.
Uh-huh. Come
Uh,
try to step on my super fantastic.
mhm. Be
Tom,
you. Find
always
where you fit in.
hey, what'd you think? What'd you like? What do you disagree with? Tell us. Tell us that we're idiots, that we're the dumbest people that ever walked the planet. I would
Sure.
love to hear
Right.
that. And
Yeah.
tell us why. Tell us what your opinions are.
Right.
Questions at therapyunzipped.com.
Mhm. Just because you have some of the symptoms doesn't mean you have that thing.
Right.
For whatever, the whole host of that. If it's severely impacting your ability to function day to day and you have some of the symptoms, go see a clinician, see a therapist, see a psychiatrist, and maybe take some tests, see a psychologist who can do some special tests regarding that. And then you can be better informed at, okay, what do I do about it? Because it's something that would require some intervention and treatment,
Right.
not just as my personality, so deal with it.
Yeah, I got a label.
It's
Now
not a
what?
crutch.
Now what?
it doesn't give you carte blanche to do whatever the hell you want to do out there.
Right. You go to the doctor and they say, "Hey, you look like you have diabetes." Okay, cool. Then I just get to run around and say I'm diabetic. Ooh, look at me. No, you actually have to do stuff. You have to change
Right.
your diet, take medications, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I think
What were
we've beat
those
that horse to death.
what were those top three things that I remember two of them that if you are these, everybody knows about them, that you are these things. Vegan, CrossFitter, and what yeah, there's a
That
third
is
one.
so true. Yeah.
If you are one of those that everybody around you knows you are,
Uh-huh.
would you
That's
tell them?
funny. Those two are true. I don't know what the third is, but I could guess probably. uh,
Thank you
Tom,
guys
thank
for
you very
listening.
much. Always good to see you.
Same. Thank you guys for listening to us. We hope that you are having a great new year and you're enjoying the show. We want to make it better. We want to add some different segments to it. Let us know what you want because we're here for you guys ultimately. And we're going to do it anyway because, we just love, hanging out and being with each other and
Mhm.
talking.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So send in your questions, send in your comments, send in your gripes, complaints, send in whatever you want to us. Questions at Therapy Unzipped. And I hope you guys have an amazing rest of the week. Great weekend. We'll see you next week.